Hello and welcome back. We're going to take a look at our own limitlessness today. Infinity. That's the title. Just one word. And actually, one word is all we really need to describe this entire course, which runs over 1,100 pages when you piece together the text and the workbook for students and the manual for teachers and throw in the two supplements as well. It's well over 1,000 pages of material. We could describe it all in one single syllable. One. Okay, the end. The end of our discussion. That's all for today, right? It really is that simple. Again, we introduce all of the complications, so let's use some symbology. In other words, words themselves, language, to help us understand what we're really doing and the power and the magnitude of what we're really doing here. When we set the ego aside, we're remembering who we are. And that is powerful, powerful indeed. So let's take a few minutes out of our day today, or this evening, whenever you're watching this, to really, really begin to appreciate our own power and magnitude, magnificence, limitlessness. Truly, let's do that today. We're wrapping up this section of the text, chapter 7, section 8, the unbelievable belief. And what is the unbelievable belief but the ego itself? It's completely incredible and unbelievable, yet we've given it our belief and assent. We've decided that this sense, this mistake, and it's just a mistake, this false sense of separation, we've gotten together and we've decided, oh, this is us. This is me. This is me. No, it's not. This isn't me. I'm not limited to this image that you see on your screen or that we see when we look in the mirror or the image that appears to hurt when we bump into a wall. That's not the Son of God. We're beyond that. Each and every one of us is beyond this mistaken sense of individuality. One. We're beyond that. Yet, of course, here in the world, as we run amok, we don't think that we're beyond it, and we refuse to accept, we stubbornly refuse to accept our oneness and choose, yes, choose instead to see littleness, pettiness, and our little grievances. We become angry at the slightest thing when you really think about it. Think about it and pay attention today as you go about your life. What triggers you? And if you're able in the moment to pay attention to how you react in an instantaneous, often knee-jerk fashion to the slightest little thing, you'll see just how enmeshed it's possible to become in our ego clinging. So how then, when that appears to be our reality, do we get out of that and set it aside? Well, it's a choice that you're invited to make, to set the ego aside today, right now. Ask your inner teacher for help. Ask your inner teacher for guidance and bring your inner teacher all illusions, all of them, without keeping a few little forms of hatred for yourself. What do we mean by that? We mean bring everything to the Holy Spirit. Forgiveness is either total or it's not at all. This means we can't keep little grudges. We can't love on 99.9% of the people in the world and hold out the other partial percentage for our own particular disdain and hatred. You can't love someone and loathe someone else and still be loving. It's total or it's not at all. Why? Because love is whole and it is total, and the hatred, the separation, is a simple mistake that we set aside. What's left? Who you really are. Love, one with God. That's what the Son of God is the thought of God, the extension of God, and ideas, thoughts, leave not their source. You've never left your source in God. And this is what the ego is absolutely terrified of, that you will set it aside. That's the only thing that it's correct about. And it's very interesting because here in A Course in Miracles, Jesus tells us that. He just comes out and says, in this one thing alone, is it correct that you will set it aside, that you will decide you no longer want and value it, and will simply leave it will. Not maybe, but definitely. When is largely up to you. That's why we say throughout these videos that we have a choice. You have a choice in the present moment between love or fear, between God or the ego, life or death. Yes, you can see it that way. Light or dark, yeah. Truth or illusion. Characterize that decision however you will in the symbology of words. They're just words, after all. So it doesn't matter what you call it. It doesn't matter what you call anything. You can call your inner teacher whatever you want to call. Your inner teacher is still part of your mind, which is very powerful. And that's not something that a lot of us are taught growing up, are we? I mean, if you were, fantastic. Most of us were not. And here we find ourselves. That's part of the reason why we find ourselves here reading A Course in Miracles and doing these lessons in the workbook and forgiving in the first place. In truth, there's nothing to forgive. But here in the world of time and space and ego clinging, which passes for our reality, well, there's everything to forgive. The world itself, for starters. It's an illusion. This is most definitely an illusion. The ego is not believable. The more we learn about it, the more we learn how ephemeral it is, how nothing it really is. It's nothing. It's an illusion. We learn how illusory and a complete mistake it really is as we do these exercises in this course. As we practice, as we engage in spiritual practice, we learn more about the ego and we realize how unbelievable it really is. And we withdraw our belief in it. It's very simple. We simply withdraw our belief in the ego. What happens then? It's gone. It's as though it were never there. And you know what? Never was. This is part of what is meant by accepting atonement for ourselves. Central to this, and this is something that is a theme, a prominent theme in A Course in Miracles, is accepting atonement for ourselves. We're invited to accept atonement for ourselves. Central to this is the acknowledgement that the separation never occurred. There's never been any separation of any kind. We're not separate from God. And we're certainly not separate from each other. One. That's the verbal math. One. Where are you? What are you? Who are you? I think you know. Deep down, you know, and that is what has you here. It is. There is this remembrance deep in all of us. And it appears as though we've hidden it away in our minds. It appears as though we've tucked it away for future use and enjoyment. Well, we go off and have a mad party of excess activity and frustration and constant suffering that we're really hesitant to get up and walk away from. We all know deep down who we are. We've never left our source. And at some point, something has led you to watching this video. Now, you don't have to, of course, be a student of A Course in Miracles to get benefit from this. You might just be checking this out. And you might be practicing this course in conjunction with another tradition or traditions that you practice to help light your way. And that's beautiful. There are many ways you could use this. You don't have to use the course as your standalone go-to for spiritual practice. You certainly can. You certainly can. And many of you do. So however you use this material, there's something in you that has responded to this call. This is the call of the Holy Spirit. It's the call, capital C, goes out to all of us at all times. The question is, are we listening? And somewhere you made a decision, whether you were consciously aware of it at the time or not, to listen. You've heard the call. You remember who you are. You remember. So let's wake up to that. This is awakening. We wake up to the truth of who we really are. We accept atonement for ourselves. Central to which is the acknowledgement that the separation never occurred. It's impossible. One, not 8 billion or more. One. We accept truth just as it is. This is one of the most powerful prayers that you could ever utter. Ask your inner teacher for help. Let me accept truth just as it is. Very, very powerful. We're told at the conclusion of this section that your wholeness has no limits. It's whole, after all. Your wholeness has no limits because being is infinity. It's eternity. It's infinite. There are no ends. It doesn't end. It's infinite. There are no boundaries. There are no restrictions. There's no gate or wall against which you ram your head when you've reached it. Infinity. One. The definition of heaven in A Course in Miracles is the awareness of perfect oneness. So let us restore this awareness to our mind. Let me accept truth just as it is. Very, very powerful indeed. So, practical matter. Yeah, how about that? Since we appear to be here running around and we can feel this if we go like this with our cheek, we can feel it if we bump our hand against the wall, we can feel it. Maybe our knee hurts or our ankle hurts or something, or maybe you've got a cold or whatever it is, because we appear to be here. We need repetition of these ideas. So what you're invited to do is to apply these ideas in your daily life. If you're doing the workbook for students, when you remember the day's idea, which is not always automatic, is it? I know that for myself. The first time I went through the workbook for students, I forgot the day's idea often, dozens of times. So if that's happening to you, no worries. It's okay. When you remember the day's idea, bring your awareness back to it and apply the day's idea. When you remember to forgive the Son of God, forgive the Son of God. There is no substitute for practical application. That's how we learn. It is of great value, of course, to have some kind of understanding of these teachings, but an intellectual understanding of anything will only take you so far, won't it? True learning comes in the practical application of these ideas, especially in these ideas, because what we're doing is we're pointing you back to who you are. So it involves you in a way that studying for a test in school never could, nor ever will be able to. So it is not necessary that you have a full and complete grasp of what Jesus is saying in this course in order to start out. So if you're new and this seems perplexing to you, that's a very, very common experience. The number one obstacle to any course student is an over-reliance on what the world highly esteems: rational, so-called rational, intellectual thinking knowledge and accumulation of knowledge and facts. Well, the real learning is in practical application, which you can do without understanding this material at all. All that you need to keep in your mind is the syllable one. So if it helps you as a practical matter to just stop yourself and say one, or this is a dream, God is, ideas leave not their source, I forgive the Son of God, I release everything to my inner teacher. Lots of very short, very memorable statements. When you remember them, bring your awareness back to them. It's the practical application that matters. So along the way, if questions should arise, and well, they do, because this is self-inquiry. So inquiry, it's quite natural to have questions on the path. Please feel welcome to leave them here if you've got them. This is a space in which you may freely ask questions about the path. And if you have not yet joined us, we'd love to have you. This is the subscription button. It's the red arrow in the corner of your screen. And we'd love to have you. There are several videos that we record here every week. And the idea behind that is, well, we're going through the text of A Course in Miracles. So quite naturally, there's a lot to say. And repetition is key. That's how we develop new habits of thinking. That's how we change our mind and switch thought systems from the ego to the Holy Spirit. It's how we learn to perceive truly, by practical application. Consistency is very important. It's important in many, many aspects of life, indeed all of it. So spirituality is no different. So I thank you, as always, for joining me. And more than that, what I thank you for is your dedication and commitment to practice. It's so, so important to every living thing that you have answered the call. You've heard the call and you've answered it. So your dedication and your commitment to practice, your practical application, your forgiveness of the Son of God is the highest gift you can give anyone, anywhere, at any time, higher than any degree of service, higher than gifts of money or donations of your time or anything like that. So thank you for that on behalf of all of us. And thank you very much for joining me.